Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'll start with a couple of announcements. First of all, I'm going to continue March Madness until the end of this week. And the reason is that over the weekend, we got a lot of requests from people. I contacted you before, and does that count? And will you still honor it? And all that kind of stuff. So it's just easier. If we're going to do it for one, we're going to do it for all. So till Friday, you have to get free courses through March Madness. All right. So if you are interested in information, send me an email, and I'll mention some free stuff coming up, and you might want to email me about these things too. First thing is, for 27 years now, I've been holding a dinner every month. I used to do it in my dining room, and now I hold it at our office, of course, during which I give a lecture and a Q&A on health. And so now that we have this great Zoom technology, you can remote in. I can't feed you virtually, but you can listen to the talk and ask questions. April 17th, 6 p.m. is the next one. That same night at 9 p.m., I'm offering another free healthcare workshop, workshop for healthcare workers who are thinking about, I'd like to be doing something other than sick care. Maybe I don't want to work for a hospital anymore, that kind of stuff. And then this is a new thing I'm doing. We'll see how it goes. But for people who are thinking they want to join Wellness Forum, but they're really not sure, I'm offering a one-time, you can only do it once, free workshop where you can take a tour of our websites. I'll do it virtually, and then I'll engage in a short Q&A with you, and you'll get a feel for what this is all about before you decide to join. All right. So if you're interested in any of that, pampopper@msn.com, and we'll send you information or sign you up or whatever. Okay. Now, today's topic, major shortcoming in healthcare today, gosh, we've got a lot of them, is the focus on surrogate markers instead of health. And I'll give you an example. Plasma cholesterol is a risk factor for coronary artery disease and cancer, but lowering cholesterol with drugs doesn't change the risk by very much. People who take statin drugs for primary prevention, for example, reduce their risk of a cardiovascular event by less than 2%, and they're more likely to be harmed than to benefit in terms of avoiding events and deaths. Meaningful reductions in the risk of coronary artery disease and cancer are only changed or achieved by changing the habits that influence the surrogate marker, in this case, cholesterol, such as diet, exercise, hydration, stress levels, and so on. Another condition for which treatment of surrogate markers is turning out to be useless and harmful is Alzheimer's disease. Amyloid plaques in the brain were discovered over 100 years ago, and because they were found in the brains of people with dementia, it was assumed that they were the cause or a contributing cause to Alzheimer's disease. It didn't take long for an unfounded assumption to drive research into Alzheimer's treatment. Shrinking or clearing the plaque would, of course, improve cognition or quality of life for patients with Alzheimer's disease. The problem is that the drugs that impact plaque are proving to be both useless and harmful. In fact, a systematic review and meta-analysis of MRI data show that anti-amyloid therapies might actually worsen outcomes for Alzheimer's patients. According to this analysis of data from 31 clinical trials, drugs to treat Alzheimer's disease result in changes in brain volume that are actually associated with worsening, not better outcomes. The researchers report that secretase inhibitors, which failed in clinical trials, worsened cognition. And monoclonal antibodies, which include two drugs for which the FDA has granted accelerated approval, lead to accelerated ventricular enlargement, which is a marker for destruction of brain tissue and atrophy, and, quote, a classic marker for neurodegeneration, according to co-author Scott Ayton. The researchers concluded, quote, mildly cognitively impaired participants treated with anti-amyloid plaque drugs were projected to have a material regression toward brain volumes typical of Alzheimer's dementia 8 months earlier than if they were untreated. The English translation being, they make things worse instead of better. Monoclonal antibody drugs include Aduhelm, which was approved by the FDA in 2021 at a cost of $56,000. I covered that in a couple of different videos and newsletter articles, so I'll refer you for more information about that drug. And Leqembi, which is expected to be approved very soon. Now, the results for the clinical trial for Leqembi were so awful that one trialist advised that it would be necessary to tell family members that they might not see much difference in their family member treated with the drug, and side effects include brain swelling and death. I also covered that in an article and video as well. The failure of these drugs to make a meaningful difference in outcomes is based not only on treating a surrogate marker, a strategy that's failed for the treatment of coronary artery disease, cancer, diabetes, and many other conditions, but also failure to recognize another known mechanism, which is reverse causation. In other words, the amyloid plaque and other abnormalities observed in the brain are likely a consequence of diet and lifestyle habits that lead to cognitive decline. Treating those markers instead of the underlying real causes can't possibly lead to better outcomes. And by the way, this is a major issue with vitamin D. Meta-analyses of hundreds of studies have shown that vitamin D is useless for preventing and treating almost all conditions, and the most likely reason is reverse causation. Disease-related inflammation results in lower vitamin D levels, which normalize when inflammation levels are lowered and the underlying condition improves. This has been documented in numerous case reports and also a study of diabetic patients treated by an emergency room for hyperglycemia. And by the way, there are 36 at least articles on vitamin D and an extensive video, lots of information about this on in our libraries and posted on our video platforms for members. So I'll refer you there for that information. So back to the Alzheimer's disease, here are some of the known risk factors. High fat, high protein diets, because as it turns out, what's good or bad for the heart and the cardiovascular system is good or bad for the brain, depending, right? Dehydration, prescription drugs, poor sleep, lack of exercise, lack of social interaction, lack of intellectual stimulation. So when you think about it, the very idea, the concept that a pill could stop or reverse all of this, it's a form of fantastical thinking. And by the way, if you look at the actual known causes of almost all diseases, the thought that a pill or a treatment can resolve all of that, it's just much more complicated than that. And part of the problem with this that I've been talking about for years is that our focus on testing and drugs and all this sort of thing really keeps people from facing the reality of their risk factors and how much power they do have to do something about it if they choose to. So that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. And I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.